before a big decision on whether former President Trump will be allowed back on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook's oversight board is set to make this announcement tomorrow morning. Now, you'll remember they suspended Trump's accounts indefinitely on January 7th, the day after the Capitol riot.
But even with the future of his social media accounts uncertain, the former president continues to spread the lie. Just this week, he repeated his false claims of election fraud in an email statement. CNN's business correspondent, Donnie O'Sullivan, and CNN's chief media correspondent, Brian Stelter, are with us. Brian, first to you. You're also the host of Reliable Sources, I should say that, 11 on Saturdays, on Sundays. Donnie, what are we expecting from the Facebook decision?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much as big a decision that Facebook is going to face. They are putting it out to their oversight board, which is this new, it's essentially a Supreme Court for Facebook, which has been set up in the past few months. It is made up of human rights experts, free expression experts, the former editor of The Guardian in London. And they are going to make this decision to say, what is what Facebook did on the 7th of January, deciding to suspend Trump indefinitely, was that the correct decision or not? If they say he should be let back on, Facebook says it's going to do what the board says and will let him back on. Obviously, if they do leave him back on, that is going to have, enormous consequences, not just for Silicon Valley, but also, of course, for the Republican Party and for the continued perpetuation of the big lie.
Brian, President Trump's lies led to a bloody, deadly insurrection. Why would they ever let him back on to peddle more of the crap?
There are a lot of members of this board that are free speech advocates, First Amendment absolutists in some cases, that are going to make an argument that these platforms should not be in the position of making these choices at all. If Trump is brought back on Facebook, it'll likely be for those reasons. But a lot of this has to do with the memory hole, right? The riot going down the memory hole. That's what Fox and right-wing media has been trying to do, and I worry that this may be another result of that.
I went back and read the statement from the Fox board back on January 21st when they decided to make that suspension indefinite. And they said that the reason was the president was actively fomenting a violent insurrection designed to thwart the peaceful transition of power. Just yesterday, he tweeted out that the new big lie is that the current president, the duly elected president, was indeed elected with enough legitimate votes. So what has changed that would lead them to any real substantial difference in their position? Brian, to you.
I think it's that they have this board, which is a group of outsiders, that they can then say, hey, it's not our call anymore. It's not Mark Zuckerberg making the decision. It's this outside board. And they are the ones reviewing the evidence. And, of course, whatever they do with Trump, it's going to set a precedent for other world leaders and former world leaders and potential future world leaders. So there's an immense amount of pressure on this board, even though it's ultimately Facebook that is deciding to shove this content moderation problem over to the board. It ultimately is still Facebook's call. Is that a fair assessment, Donnie?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is sort of a stroke of genius by Facebook in some ways because it set up this board and it's trying to let Zuckerberg off the hook here. And I think a lot of people would say, look, Facebook's trying to do the right thing. It's better to have experts making these decisions than Zuckerberg alone. But at the end of the day, I mean, this still is Mark Zuckerberg's platform, and he is ultimately responsible.
But Tony, I mean, you have done so much reporting about what happens when disinformation gets into the bloodstream, be it through Fox, be it through social media. Obviously it's dangerous. We saw a deadly insurrection, but every day you interview people who also are just getting fed complete disinformation and making bad choices as a result about their health. I mean, here's just a few examples.
You know anything about how the vaccination can change your DNA?
It's not going to change my DNA.
You don't think so? You have any proof of it that won't?
Do you have any proof that it will?
I trust what I've heard